We utilized a powerful AI system to generate two intellectual personas, one atheist
Hello, I identify as an atheist.
and one who believes in God.
Hello, I'm someone who believes in God.
We brought these two thinkers together for a direct debate on one of humanity's toughest questions. To evaluate the discussion, we chose 5 separate AI models to act as judges and assess which arguments they found more compelling. Please join us and commit to staying honest. Don't jump ahead in the video to see the outcome. The debate starts now. Does the presence of suffering and evil in the world disprove the existence of God?
Yes, it does. The reality of suffering and pain in the world stands as one of the most powerful arguments against the existence of God. If there is a God who is both all-loving and all-powerful, then why would he permit innocent children to starve to death? Why would illnesses like cancer even exist? Why would natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis wipe out innocent families? I know some argue that this suffering is a test of faith, or meant to grant us free will. But these explanations don't make logical sense. A caring father wouldn't torture his child just to test their love. And an all-powerful God could create a world that includes both free will and love, but without all the needless pain and suffering. It's similar to if I ran a lab of mice and intentionally let them suffer and die just to test their loyalty. That would be immoral for any human, let alone a flawless and all-loving God.
We had multiple large language models rate each reply on a scale of 0 to 100 using 10 evaluation criteria. The scores given to the atheist's initial statement are shown below.
I acknowledge that suffering exists, but that doesn't prove God's non-existence. Actually, without God, we wouldn't even have a basis to label something as wrong or immoral. Claiming that the suffering of innocent children is bad relies on a moral framework that must come from a higher source. Take your mouse lab analogy. Why is it wrong to harm mice? In a godless universe, we're merely random clusters of atoms. Under such a view, suffering and pain are meaningless. They're nothing more than brain chemistry. Also, we can't know for certain that God lacks good reasons for permitting suffering, just like a child might not grasp why their parents allow a painful vaccine. Our limited perspective might prevent us from comprehending divine reasoning.
Your vaccine comparison is notable, but it misses a key difference. Parents understand that a vaccine is essential for a child's health, and that temporary pain prevents severe illness. But in the case of a starving child, what higher purpose does that serve? On the topic of ethics without God, your reasoning is flawed. Right and wrong can be judged by the outcomes of our actions and how they affect others. If something causes needless suffering to conscious beings, it's morally wrong, and we don't need God to know this. And if morality does require a higher source, how can you be sure that source is good? It might just as well be malevolent. This question echoes Plato's famous dilemma: do the gods cherish good actions because they're good? Or are actions good merely because the gods approve of them?
Let me respond to your last point about Plato's dilemma. I see goodness and God as inherently linked. It's like questioning whether a circle is round because of its shape or because that's how we define a circle. God represents pure goodness and therefore cannot be evil. On starving children, while we can't perceive the greater good, that doesn't prove it isn't there. You're forming a broad conclusion from a limited perspective. It's like an ant assuming there's no good reason for humans to destroy its nest just to build a hospital. As for morality without God, the issue is you can't justify why we ought to care about others' well-being in a purely material world. Why would another's suffering be significant? To me, that becomes a subjective choice, not a universal moral fact.
The flaw in your ant analogy is that, unlike ants, humans possess moral awareness and reasoning. With that capacity, we recognize that much of the world's suffering appears entirely needless and pointless. You ask why we ought to care about others' well-being. I believe that's a question more appropriately directed at a believer. Do you only value others because God commands it? So if God claimed that harming children was good, would you accept that? As rational and social creatures, we can see that empathy and cooperation are vital for our survival and societal growth. Morality arises from this evolutionary and natural process, not from the commands of a divine being. Also, history shows that religious faith itself has at times led to wrongdoing and violence.
Your point about morality coming from social and evolutionary roots has a key flaw. Evolution can explain why we feel certain things are right or wrong, but not whether they actually are. It's like saying that since evolution made us enjoy sugar, eating candy must be morally good. As for your example about God and child torture, that's a logically impossible scenario. It's like asking what if 2 plus 2 were equal to 5. God can't call torturing children good, because that would go against his perfectly good nature. And yes, some religious followers have acted unethically, but that just means they strayed from their beliefs, not that the beliefs themselves are flawed. Just like when a scientist commits fraud, it doesn't mean the scientific method is invalid.
It's notable that you call my child torture example an impossible scenario, because the God you're referring to is currently allowing children to suffer. You argue that God can't see torturing kids as good due to his nature, but this same God permits wars, hunger, and illness to harm children. Your 2 plus 2 equals 5. Analogy doesn't hold either. Math operates within a logical framework of defined rules. Yet by your view, ethics depend on God's will, so you should be capable of explaining why God allows certain suffering, but not others. As for evolution, it's true evolution shaped our moral instincts, but we can assess and improve them through reason and logic. Just as science starts with observational inputs, but arrives at objective truths via reasoning and experimentation.
You're equating natural suffering with deliberate suffering, which is a flawed comparison. There's a difference between someone purposely setting your house on fire and lightning striking it. Your comparison of math and morality actually supports my argument. Just like math truths exist outside of human opinion, moral truths also exist independently and are grounded in God's nature. They're constant, like mathematical laws. Your analogy to science also has issues. Science describes what exists, not what ought to be. We can't derive moral obligations from facts. Knowing that empathy helps society survive doesn't automatically make it a moral rule.
The separation you draw between natural and intentional suffering actually undermines the idea of God's existence. Because if there is a God who governs everything, then all suffering, whether from nature or intent, is effectively deliberate. Disasters and illnesses fall under his control and could be stopped. As for your point on is and should, your reasoning is flawed. We can arrive at moral guidelines by considering the results of our actions and shared human aims like minimizing pain and enhancing well-being. It's similar to chess. Once you know the goal is to win, you can judge which moves are good or bad. Saying that morality is fixed like mathematics doesn't align with religious history. Different religions, and even the same one over time, have shifted their views on ethics. This shows that moral views in religion aren't static and evolve with societal changes.
When you argue that God should stop all natural disasters, you're proposing an unrealistic world. The natural laws that cause events like earthquakes are also vital for things like mountain formation and sustaining Earth's atmosphere. Your chess analogy is thought-provoking, but those rules were made by humans. In a godless world, who sets life's purpose? Why should reducing suffering be the main aim? Why not pursuing power or personal satisfaction instead? As for evolving religious morals, you're mistaking changing human interpretations for shifting principles. It's like thinking the laws of physics changed just because our understanding improved. Moral truths remain the same. It's our grasp of them that evolves.
Surely an all-powerful God could design a world where these laws function without inflicting harm. Why not make earthquakes happen only when no one is around area? And why should cancer even exist? As for the meaning of life, not having a God actually gives us the responsibility to define our own meaning. And most people, religious or not, agree that minimizing suffering and boosting happiness is a more reasonable goal. Even someone chasing power and pleasure would realize, on reflection, that in a world full of misery, they themselves couldn't truly fulfill their desires. Your physics analogy doesn't hold either. We uncover physical laws through experiment and observation. But how do we discover these so-called fixed moral truths you refer to?
That's a great question about how we discover moral truths. We can access them using a mix of reason, moral instincts, and divine insight, just as understanding the world needs both our senses and our reasoning abilities. Now, back to natural laws. You suggest God could ensure earthquakes only occur in empty areas, but that would mean ongoing interference with nature, like a programmer constantly tweaking code, making the system unstable and unreliable. On the topic of life's purpose, in a chaotic, meaningless universe, even that logical conclusion you mentioned could just be a product of evolution. Why should we trust a brain evolved solely for survival?
Your software analogy is clever, but a skilled programmer would build the system right from the beginning so it doesn't require constant adjustments. An all-powerful God could have established natural laws from the start to avoid needless suffering. You argue we shouldn't trust the results of an evolved brain, but that undermines your own point, since belief in God is also a product of that same brain. If we can't trust evolved reasoning, how can we rely on it for a belief in God or divine messages? Regarding reason, intuition, and revelation, different revelations contradict each other, so which one should we trust? At least in science, consensus is possible through testing and observation. But with revelation, everyone makes different claims, and there's no clear way to confirm them.
You've brought up a valid concern about the contradictions among various revelations, but this issue also appears in science. Scientific theories can sometimes conflict with one another. The key is to seek the best explanation through reason and experience. Just as scientists choose the theory that best fits the evidence, we can select the most rational religion from the options available. Concerning the world's original design, keep in mind that we can't be certain this isn't the best possible version. Maybe altering the physical laws would have led to even greater issues. It's similar to questioning an engineer for not building a stronger bridge, without realizing that doing so might have introduced other complications. As for trusting our minds, there's a crucial distinction. If God is our creator, then we can trust that our capacity for reason was designed to grasp truth, not merely to help us survive.
Comparing scientific theories with religious revelations isn't quite right. Science involves testable, falsifiable claims. When evidence contradicts a theory, it gets rejected. But when religious beliefs clash with reality, they're often reinterpreted or explained away by saying God's ways are mysterious. Your point about this being the best world is also flawed. You claim this could be the best version, but an all-powerful God should be able to overcome any limitations. The bridge analogy doesn't fit. Engineers have constraints, but God does not. Lastly, your argument about trusting reason goes in circles. You argue that since God created our reason, it's reliable. But how do you know God created it? Because your reason says so. So the argument loops back on itself.
Yes, scientific theories are falsifiable, but some religious beliefs can be challenged too. For instance, if it were proven Jesus never existed, that would disprove Christianity. Or if the Quran were shown to contain contradictions, its divine origin would be invalidated. On the topic of God's power, your view is too simplistic. Omnipotence means doing anything that's logically possible, not things that contradict logic. God can't grant us true free will and at the same time block all our wrong choices. That would be a contradiction. As for the circularity issue, we come to believe in God through many routes: personal experience, philosophy, history, and the universe's design. Reason is one way, but not the only method.
The issue is, every religion includes personal experiences. A Hindu might say they've encountered Krishna, while a Buddhist may claim to have reached nirvana. These can't all be valid at once. On falsifiability, your examples fall short. Even if Jesus were proven not to have lived, many Christians would argue that faith in the spiritual message matters more than the historical fact. And if contradictions appeared in holy texts, people would say we must reinterpret them. And regarding the order in the universe you mention, it could simply be the result of natural processes. Darwin demonstrated that even complex life forms can arise without a designer, so invoking God isn't necessary to explain nature's order.
The theory of evolution only tells us how species came from one another. It doesn't explain why anything exists in the first place or why the physical laws are so precisely balanced to allow life. About spiritual experiences, I agree they can't all be correct in the same way. It's similar to people feeling different parts of an elephant in the dark. Each grasps a portion of the truth. Diverse spiritual experiences might reflect distinct parts of a greater transcendent reality. On falsifiability, it's true that some religious people ignore evidence. But this happens in science as well. Some scientists resist changing their views. That reflects human fallibility, not a flaw in science or religion.
There's an issue with your elephant metaphor and how it relates to religious experiences. In the story, there's an actual elephant that everyone is feeling. But with religious claims, you have to prove there's something real behind them. As for the fine-tuning of physical laws, there are two issues. First, we don't know how precise these conditions truly are. Maybe life could exist in entirely different circumstances. Second, even if the values are extremely specific, the multiverse idea might account for it. Among countless universes with varying laws, we just happen to be in one where life works. And yes, some scientists do hold on to wrong ideas. But science eventually reaches agreement through testing and data. In contrast, religion lacks an objective method to settle its disputes.
The multiverse theory you mentioned has major issues too. For one, it can't be tested or proven, just like the criticisms you direct at religion. Secondly, even if the theory is true, it still doesn't explain why there's something rather than nothing. As for the elephant analogy, you're mixing up the premise with the conclusion. I wasn't using it to prove God exists, but to show that differing religious experiences don't automatically mean all of them are false. On scientific consensus, keep in mind that many things we now accept in science were once opposed by the majority. Agreement doesn't always equal truth. Sometimes a small group holds the truth against mainstream belief.
You're right that we can't directly test the multiverse, but it's grounded in known physical laws, not based on personal accounts or old scriptures like religious claims are. It's similar to how Einstein's equations led to predictions of black holes before they were observed. As for the question of why anything exists rather than nothing, this is a philosophical question that applies to theism too. Why does God exist instead of nothing? If you argue that God has always existed, then we could just as easily say maybe the universe or multiverse has also always been here. And on scientific consensus, it can be wrong, but science has tools to self-correct. Bad theories get discarded when new evidence arises. In contrast, religious beliefs often remain unchanged despite contradictory facts.
Regarding multiverses in physics, the key is that equations describe what exists, not why it exists. Even if we grasp how a multiverse functions, we still don't know why those laws and equations exist at all. You ask why God exists rather than nothing. The difference is, by definition, God is a necessary being. He must exist. It's similar to asking why 2 plus 2 equals 4, but the physical universe might not have existed at all, or might be different. And concerning evolving beliefs, religions have changed over time. Our interpretation of scriptures has grown with scientific discovery. The key difference is, in science, surface-level facts shift. In religion, it's our insight into deeper truths that evolves.
Saying that God is a necessary being is an unsupported assertion. It's just wordplay. Manipulation. You define God as necessarily existing and conclude that he exists. That's like saying a perfect dragon must exist because you defined it that way. Your analogy involving 2 plus 2 equals 4 doesn't apply here either. That's a logical truth that arises from how numbers are defined. But God's existence is a factual claim about reality. You can't establish the existence of something real just by defining it. And on evolving religious views, that's actually a weakness of religion. When science contradicts a religious belief, followers reinterpret scripture to fit science. This proves that the true foundation of knowledge is science, not religion.
Your perfect dragon analogy is intriguing, but it differs significantly from the concept of God. God, as the source of existence and first cause, must logically be necessary. Otherwise, we face infinite regression. It's like comparing real and imaginary numbers. Real numbers are necessary by nature, while a dragon is a contingent entity. As for interpreting sacred texts, that's not automatically a flaw. Science, too, revises old theories with new findings, like how relativity reshaped our grasp of time and space. This highlights that truth is deeper than what we first understood. And lastly, science doesn't have answers to every question. It can't tell us why we ought to be moral or what life's meaning is. Those kinds of questions lie outside its domain.
It's true science can't directly solve questions about meaning or morality, but it helps us understand why we even ask them. Research shows that seeking meaning and ethics is tied to how our brains evolved. There's no need to believe a higher being planted these questions in us. Now, on the topic of the first cause and the problem of infinite regression, why can't God be just one link in this chain? If everything requires a cause, then God must also need a cause. As well, if you claim God doesn't need a cause, then why couldn't the universe or the laws of physics themselves just exist without a cause? And regarding change in science versus religion, scientific shifts come from new evidence, while religious changes often react to outside forces.
The argument you made about brain evolution and the search for meaning is a double-edged sword. If our brains evolved purely for survival, how can we fully rely on our scientific and rational thinking? It's possible that belief in materialism itself is just another evolutionary byproduct. As for the first cause, the issue is that the physical universe shows traits of a contingent entity. It changes, is limited, and depends on time and space, whereas God, being immaterial, doesn't share these constraints. It's like comparing numbers to tangible objects. The number 2 doesn't require a cause, but 2 apples do. On the matter of religion evolving, I agree that external forces have sometimes driven these changes, but that highlights religion's ability to align with truth rather than proving it's fundamentally flawed.
Your reasoning about trusting the brain is circular. You claim we can't rely on an evolved brain, yet you use that same brain to argue for God's existence. In fact, our capacity to uncover scientific facts and create technology proves that reasoning, though evolved, can still lead us to truth. Equating God with the number 2 is flawed. Numbers are abstract, not actual entities. The number 2 doesn't need a cause because it doesn't physically exist. It's a mental construct. But the God you're describing is supposed to be a real entity who influences the world. And as for religion adapting to truth, this actually demonstrates that religion follows science instead of leading us to truth. If religion were truly from the universe's creator, it wouldn't require so much revision and reinterpretation.
You bring up an interesting point about religion seeming to follow, but maybe that's intentional, part of a divine plan where our grasp of truth unfolds slowly, like a wise teacher who lets students discover lessons over time instead of revealing everything at once. Regarding abstract ideas versus real entities, I agree they aren't the same. But that's exactly why God must be beyond physical matter. If he were material, the issues you brought up would apply. God, like logic and math, is both abstract and real. As for trusting reason, I'm not saying we shouldn't trust it. I'm saying that without God, we can't explain why reason works so well with reality. That very harmony points to intelligent design.
The teacher analogy doesn't justify religious changes. A good teacher doesn't give wrong information that needs fixing later. Yet religious scriptures are filled with outdated scientific ideas that must later be reinterpreted. On God being both abstract and real, that's a contradiction. Math laws express logical relationships, not actual beings. You can't claim God is abstract like math laws and also say he acts in the world and answers prayers. As for reason aligning with reality, this is precisely what evolution accounts for. Creatures without an accurate grasp of reality wouldn't survive or pass on their genes. We are the result of millions of years of evolution that shaped our brains to reflect reality.
Your evolutionary account of why reason aligns with reality is incomplete. Natural selection explains how we grasp things needed to survive, but it doesn't clarify why we're able to understand abstract ideas like higher mathematics or philosophy, which weren't critical for survival. Regarding the claim that being abstract and real is contradictory, it's not. God can exist beyond the material world and still influence it, similar to how our immaterial mind impacts our physical body. As for scientific mistakes in Scripture, we need to remember that these writings aim to give spiritual direction, not teach science. If they had used modern scientific terms, ancient readers wouldn't have understood them.
Your example of the mind being immaterial is interesting but incorrect. Science shows the mind results from brain function. When the brain is harmed, the mind is too. This proves the mind isn't separate from physical matter. As for abstract skills like mathematics, those abilities are outcomes of our complex brain evolution. A brain that developed to solve survival challenges, but also gained these abilities secondarily. It's like how wings initially helped with temperature control before being adapted for flight. As for sacred texts, if they truly originated from the universe's creator, they should have stated scientific facts in clear terms. For instance, rather than saying the Earth is flat, they might have said that the Earth is round. That wouldn't have needed complex scientific vocabulary.
The development of cognitive abilities differs significantly from the evolution of wings. While wings evolved gradually from one physical role to another, the leap from basic physical awareness to grasping abstract ideas like philosophy and mathematics is far greater. Concerning the brain-mind connection, it's true that damage to the brain impacts the mind, but this doesn't prove they're identical. It's similar to how damaging an antenna distorts a TV signal. Yet the image itself isn't the antenna. Regarding sacred scriptures, imagine if God had stated that the earth is round. People back then, who only perceived a flat horizon, might have dismissed such a claim and rejected the entire spiritual message. Even simple truths often require the right cultural setting to be understood.
Both participants in this debate delivered strong arguments, though the atheist side held a slight advantage. It's important to remember that the debate's content and the resulting scores were shaped by the original prompt and the evaluation standards. The purpose was to observe how two large language models engage in debate and, in doing so, offer insights that we as humans might learn from. Hopefully, it served that purpose. Subscribe for more videos.